Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to tonight's Planning and Development Control Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. My name is Councillor Rachel Layton and I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. If I lose connection and can't chair the meeting at any point, then our Vice Chair, Councillor Rebecca Harvey, will take over for me. I'd just like to remind all participants of a few housekeeping points, if I may. So please keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking. And when you finish speaking, please remember to put your microphone back on mute. When prompted, members of the committee may indicate that they wish to speak, but please wait until I call on you before speaking fully. And I also ask that members keep their questions and comments brief and to the point wherever possible. If any councillor leaves the meeting or loses connection during an item, then we'll pause and wait for a few minutes for them to reconnect. If a councillor is not present for a substantial part of the discussion, then they will not be able to vote on that item. The quorum for this meeting is 4 members of the committee. If we have fewer than 4 members in attendance, then I will adjourn the meeting. I'll now move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. We have all members present this evening, so we have no apologies for absence. Item 2 is a roll call and declaration of interest. So I'll now do a roll call to confirm the members in attendance. I'll call on members in alphabetical order. When called on, please say present and note any declarations of interest. If you don't have any declarations of interest, please say present. So, Councillor Ahern.
Present.
Councillor Harcourt.
Present.
Councillor Harvey.
Present.
Councillor Carmel.
Present.
Councillor Perez.
Present.
Councillor Sadiq.
Present.
Councillor Thorley.
Present.
Wonderful. And I am also obviously present and I have no declarations of interest to make, which means we can move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of January. So I'll now call on each member in turn to confirm minutes of the previous meeting. If you agree the minutes, please say agreed. If not, please say not agreed and explain the reason why. So Councillor Ahern.
Agreed.
Councillor Harcourt.
Agreed.
Councillor Harvey.
Agreed.
Councillor Carmel.
Agreed.
Councillor Perez.
Agreed.
Councillor Sadiq.
Agreed.
Councillor Thorley.
Agreed.
And I also agree the minutes, which means we move straight on to items number 4 and items number 5. So that's 101 to 103 Shepherd's Bush Road and 105 Shepherd's Bush Road. I understand there'll be a joint presentation which covers both applications. So if I can please ask our presenting officer, Neil Edgerton, to please introduce the reports. And Neil, I'll just give you a moment to share your screen.
I hope this can be seen now.
Neil, you're slightly quiet. I don't know if you can speak up for us a tiny bit.
Okay. I hope the screen can be seen now.
Yeah, we can see your screen. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. So the relates to 2 planning applications, one for 101 to 103 Shepherd's Bush Road and one for 105 Shepherd's Bush Road. The application essentially is for a change of use of the existing hotel at 101 to 103 to a hostel accommodation on a temporary basis until November 2023. This would also include the provision of a small internal link to 105 Shepherd's Bush Road, which is the subject of the other application, which again looks to change the use from a guest house to a hostel accommodation on a temporary basis till November 2023. The application sites are on the east side of Shepherd's Bush Road, close to the junction with Sterndale Road. The application site is within the Lakeside, Sinclair and Blythe Road Conservation Area. That's the obviously image of the front of the 2 properties. And now I've got just some aerial views. Again, these would be the properties in question. And again, from the rear, these are the properties. This is a photograph showing some of the accommodation also at the moment within the site. And again, just as an example of the rooms. This is the proposed ground floor plan of 101 to 103 Shepherd's Bush Road. Sorry. And see, there's be an office here for staff, then bedroom accommodation, another room here. There'll be staff meeting room and meeting rooms here where St Mungo's will be operating this site, will be working with their clients to assess their needs and to help move them to more permanent accommodation. And again, then on the first floor is all accommodation shown, and the second floor and the third floor. All rooms have their own toilet and bathroom/shower facilities. The rooms would have, each room would have a fridge and fridge and a microwave, and they would also have televisions, and there would be Wi-Fi access too for the guests. This is a floor plan showing the layout for 105 Shepherd's Bush Road. If you see here at ground floor, there's the small access between the two sites. Again, there'll be an office and staff room on this site, with the rest of accommodation being bedrooms. St Mungo's are very keen. They recognise that the use can lead to some complaints about antisocial behaviour and some issues from their clients. They do have a patrol route that they operate on at the moment, currently shown in the blue line, which indicate their staff patrol several times a day, throughout the day and late into the night, different hours, all in high visibility jackets, patrolling the area, making notes of any antisocial behaviour they become aware of. If it's their own clients, then notes are made of that, who's involved and what they're up to. That would then be raised with the customer themselves and with their caseworkers. And those logs of the patrols are shared with Hammersmith and Fulham Council as part of the normal operations. I mean, officers are supportive of the two applications, and it's recommended that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions below, as the recommendation is shown on the screens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil. If I can move on then to speakers on this item. So we have two residents speaking in objection. So I'd like to invite Astrid Winkler-Studd and Lindsay Wright to address committee. If you'd like to unmute your microphones. Astrid and Lindsay, welcome to tonight's planning committee. You've got 5 minutes between both of you in which to address committee. It's entirely up to you how you want to use that time, how you want to split it between you. But what I'll do is I'll give you a warning when you've got 1 minute remaining, if that's okay. So take it away whenever you're ready.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you virtually. My name is Astrid Winkler-Studd, and I'm a social worker specialised in mental health issues and a mother of 3 young children. And I live at the Shepherd's Bush Road end of Dewhurst Road. So that means I'm right around the corner from several hotels being run by St Mungo's as hostels for rough sleepers since the start of the pandemic. I have lived locally for 7 years, so I have quite a bit of pre-pandemic experience of the neighbourhood. As a social worker and a Christian who believes strongly in the common good, I share the council's concerns about getting rough sleepers off the streets, particularly in the pandemic context, and I think the government's everyone in policy on this has been crucial. And as a mental health specialist and being a daily observer of the current situation in my neighbourhood, what is clear to me is that the level and complexity of these homeless clients' needs, particularly around substance misuse, means that St Mungo's, even with the enhanced staffing proposed for the new hostel, struggle to stop them from engaging in drug dealing, the inevitable associated crime, and unfortunately, usually when intoxicated, antisocial behaviour, including what we've experienced. People openly urinating on the street in front of our children, shouting that wakes us all late at night, and drinking, dealing or prepping drug fixes on local doorsteps in full view of children. My neighbour was even physically attacked a few months ago outside her home. Experience of these issues tells us that concentrating a lot of traumatised people, many with substance misuse issues, in a neighbourhood that is already accommodating many others with similar needs, plus a number of asylum seekers and other vulnerable groups housed locally by the Home Office and GLA, is likely to result in a ghetto around these hostels, which local people avoid, and they have already started to. And where an existing drug dealing and ASB problem becomes even worse. St Mungo's have demonstrated that they struggle to manage this. Unfortunately, their past good neighbour plans haven't lived up to their promises. I've never seen any of those people with the high-vis jackets patrolling around my house. And this will definitely have a significant negative impact on local residents and businesses. As a mother of young children, what I can tell you is that my neighbourhood has changed so much since our local hotels became hostels for the homeless. I no longer feel safe walking around our local streets with my kids. The proposed 40-bed hostel is right next to a pedestrian crossing used by my children and over 200 other children daily to get to and from school. I question whether it is really wise to locate this facility at the heart of a neighbourhood full of young families and on a local high street with businesses desperate to attract footfall post-pandemic. Finally, as a proud resident of Hammersmith and Fulham, I asked the council. There have been over 60 objections to this application from residents, schools and the police. Could we aim for a better, more dispersed and carefully consulted solution, both for local residents and rough sleepers? It's my professional opinion that we can do better as a borough than creating a ghetto, which is what this approval I think would mean. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Wright. I am a mother of 2 young children and also a proud resident of Hammersmith and Fulham for 14 years. I, along with many others, fully support everything Astrid has said. Indeed, my family has shared many of the same negative experiences on Shepherd's Bush Road. I question the lack of due process that has occurred with this accelerated application. The rationale for change in use includes permanent lack of demand for the current use. These hotels pre-pandemic were well run with high occupancy and better than average ratings. Tourists relied on them for decent accommodation and local restaurants and shops benefited. The pandemic came and it was all taken away overnight. It is not that there is a lack of demand, it's that there is a pandemic, but this is temporary. Certainly we sympathize with the owner Karam Saba's need to stay financially afloat, a position shared with many other small businesses in our community. However, this should not come at the expense of due planning. It should also not come at the expense of other nearby hotels and businesses' ability to get back on their feet, who, as Astrid explains, will be deeply impacted by people avoiding this area should this be approved. Did many of these local businesses who aren't even open today due to the pandemic have any opportunity to raise their concerns?
Sorry to interrupt, you've got 30 seconds remaining, please.
Labour's manifesto and Hammersmith and Fulham's vision statement promised to work with us and for us and not to impose policy onto us. We ask you, our elected representatives, to keep your word to us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you both, and thank you for coming along to address committee this evening. Thank you both for your time. All right, if I can move on to our third speaker, who is Adam Rees, the applicant, speaking in support of the application. So, Adam, welcome to this evening's Planning and Development Control Committee. Whenever you're ready, you also have 5 minutes in which to address committee, and I'll try and give you a warning when you've got a minute or 30 seconds remaining. So, Adam, over to you whenever you're ready.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm a service director in St Mungo's and I cover Hammersmith and Fulham. St Mungo's has a long history in the borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, providing many services, award-winning services, accommodation services, and we've housed many people sustainably with partners, the local authority, and I want to emphasise with local resident support, many hundreds of people over the years. And most recently, this has involved St Mungo's responding to the pandemic and the national push to bring rough sleepers and those in shared sleeping spaces into more appropriate self-contained accommodation. The Everyone In initiative, as you know, as the other speaker rightly said, has been very successful. It's avoided mass outbreaks and deaths in the homeless population, and it's again secured quite a number of sustainable moves away from the streets, which is ultimately what we want to do. As you know, the planning application is to secure 2 properties in the medium term to provide assessment and move on facilities for homeless people in the area, replacing shelters and shared spaces which are no longer viable. I do understand, I really share, there's been a number of concerns and raised an impact on the community about this facility, and more widely the impact of increased antisocial behaviour as more hotels in Shepherd's Bush Road are used for temporary accommodation. We take our responsibilities to the community very seriously. Our services are part of the community, and our staff and our clients have responsibilities in how they behave and act in the locality of our services and in the wider borough. The service proposed will be markedly different from the services that sprung up during the response to COVID this year. And I want to emphasise that this service will be and is well staffed across 24 hours with at least 3 members of staff on at all times. It's one service, it's with security on at night, it's got CCTV in operation. Clients living with us are booked in with clear rules about their behaviour in the locality, including no ASB, drug use, street drinking or street begging in the locality. And staff carry out patrols. Now, they might not carry out patrols across, like they're not patrolling everywhere across Shepherd's Bush Road, but they are maintaining around the accommodation and around the streets around there, and making note and intervening where it's safe to do so. So this project is about getting clients quickly assessed and moved off the streets into safe and secure long-term accommodation so we can break the cycle of homelessness. And I believe passionately that it's about breaking the links to street lifestyle and the detrimental effects this has on a client's life chances. Clients being involved in street drinking, ASB and crime runs counter to our aims for them. I've seen many people over many years, if people get pulled back to the streets and live that street lifestyle, that is fundamentally harming their recovery. We know that this is not in itself a solution, this building, and we are with the local authority, with funding, investing ourselves in longer term accommodation that is dispersed and that people can live securely for many years to come, away from homelessness where they truly recover. I think it's worth making the point that the vast majority of clients, the vast majority, pass through our services and pass through all services and have a positive experience and outcome, and that they are, in the main, the victims of ASB and violence, and that's something that we also are aware of. There should be no reason for clients to be on the streets causing antisocial behaviour and activity. All clients have their own room, 24-hour support, all matters relating to their move on, including support with benefits, substance use, identification, food, work and entertainment is there. Everybody has a television, it's Wi-Fi enabled, they have microwave and fridges. And I think some of the objections about food being supplied, that is, we are supplying all of that. We are integrated with local NHS services, with GPs, with the drug and alcohol services, with the DWP, and we'll work with other charities. So it is a holistic approach. It's not of itself people being dumped there. It very much isn't that. If clients do cause issues in the locality, their tenure will be at risk. Serious incidents, including violent crimes, ASB, drug dealing, are investigated swiftly and do lead to eviction if that's appropriate. We'll have a 24-hour reporting hotline, and people can call us, and we will work about our clients or and give advice about other stuff that's going on in the locality. We haven't as yet been approached directly about where we've been running the one hotel, the Saba, by the police about anyone who lives there. General stuff about the area, but nothing about the individuals that.
Adam, you've got 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. We're committed as an organisation at a senior and service level to be involved with working with residents, local wardens and police to really address the issues. And I've spoken to a number of residents about locality plans and really getting on top of not just the current stuff, but the historic stuff that is going on. We are partners in that. We are part of the Street Population Forum where we identify individuals and work on plans to get them off the street and make them make sure they're housed sustainably. So I just want to say in summary, we believe the approach we take and will take in the running of this project will bring benefits to individuals in helping them move off the street sustainably. We will do it in a way to bring minimal impact into the local area, and we'll set up significant safeguards to mitigate this. And more broadly, we will be active members of any plans to have a wider locality approach that addresses issues of street activity and ensures local residents and our clients, who are most often the victims of crime, are safe and secure in their daily lives.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much, and thank you for coming along to address committee this evening. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, we can now move on to members' discussion. So, Councillor Carmel, I can see you've already got your hand up, so if I can come to you first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The first question is purely a question of clarification. Looking at the report in front of us, and in particular paragraph 2.4 on page 13, I'm struggling to understand the planning history. When was the building ever a class 1 office? Because it doesn't show up in the planning history.
Neil, are you able to take that one for us?
I mean, obviously, looking at the history of our records, in 2010 there was a permission for a change of use from office to hotel use. I mean, that was taken from our records.
But with respect, Mr. Edgerton, you understand my perplexion, if I could put it that, because there's, as far as I can see, there's no authorised use as an office building.
Certainly, looking at the previous history, there does not appear to. I mean, there was obviously paragraph 2.9, use of former area health authority premises as an extension to existing team social workers' offices. Then obviously there's other historic things where there were permissions granted for excuse me, providing large bedrooms and use of a hotel, but that is certainly the, all I can say is the description from our records has an application from 2010 for that change of use.
I'm grateful to you, Mr. Edgerton. I was just trying to understand not only the history of the property, but the evolution in uses. I do have some questions on the application, but I'm quite happy to let others go first. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Carmel. Would anyone else like to ask any questions about this application? I don't have any hands at the moment, so I'll just give you a moment to raise any hands if you wanted to. Councillor Harcourt, thank you very much. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of questions. Because obviously I've seen the report, and in fact I had an email from one of our speakers about this particular application as well. So there's a number of points that come up, and obviously one of the ones is to do with management and such like, and this is obviously part of government funding and local authority policy and so on. What is there by way of contract or service level agreement, whatever it may be, to ensure that this place is run properly and without any detriment to residents? Because obviously there are real concerns about this.
Julia, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Councillor Layton. It's Julia Copeland. I'm the Commissioner responsible for homelessness services in Hammersmith and Fulham. So there will be if the planning application is approved and the service relocates, or a service is established at the site in question, then a contract will be put in place between the council and St Mungo's. That will be the council's standard terms and conditions, which cover all aspects of the contractual relationship between us and a provider. There will be clearly set out key performance indicators, which will cover a whole range of St Mungo's performance, from the way they manage health and safety to the way they manage their staff, the way they recruit their staff, the way they train their staff, the management of the locality, as we just discussed, complaints, the types of complaints they get, the way they respond to complaints, outcomes for residents. Obviously, that's really critical. The main rationale for this service is to get better outcomes for local residents. The contract will also have default clauses, so if St Mungo's breaches or doesn't deliver on those key performance indicators, some of them will be critical default, so could lead to a range of penalties, including contract termination. I and my team will be responsible for monitoring the contract. I meet regularly, weekly. We speak more frequently with the area manager. I meet every couple of weeks with Adam Rees to discuss their services in Hammersmith and Fulham, and that would obviously continue. With a new service, we'd have an implementation group that would be overseeing the implementation of a new service, and to ensure that their plan was implemented to the full.
Thanks. Obviously one of the, or a couple of the issues that come up about hostels such as this is, and it has been raised, is the use of either drugs and alcohol and such like. What measures are there in place to deal with, shall we say, somebody who turns up for the accommodation a little bit the worse for wear from alcohol or drugs?
Shall I take that question again, Councillor Layton?
Yes, please. Thank you, Julia.
So all residents, when they move in, their needs are assessed. So a tailored support plan will be put in place, which sets out the kinds of services and support that residents will need, both from their key worker, but also signposting to a range of services. We'll have in-reach services from the treatment from organisations like Turning Point and who are substance use and alcohol services. There'll also be health clinics run from this site. If people will also have to enter into an occupancy agreement which sets out what they can and can't do, and that will include house rules. Causing behaviour that causes engaging in behaviour which disturbs both other people living in the accommodation, the local community, local businesses, does count as a breach of somebody's tenancy or occupancy agreement, and St Mungo's would have a sort of an escalation process that could eventually lead to somebody losing their accommodation. I think, as Mr. Rees sort of set out in his presentation, there is no reason why people should be on the street drinking, and that a zero tolerance approach will be taken by St Mungo's, working in partnership with a whole range of other agencies to help people address their needs, while recognising that people's needs can be complex and that their journey to recovery isn't always linear. But a combination of support, but also escalation to enforcement measures if necessary, community protection notices, referral to panels where action plans are put in place to get them to help them address their behaviour. People are not allowed visitors into the accommodation, where sometimes drinking in small or large groups can cause nuisance to neighbours and indeed other residents.
Okay. In terms of issues such as noise, you've mentioned about no gathering inside of visitors and such like. As I recall, there's quite a large front area to that property. obviously you could get quite a good few people out there, and presumably smoking and just generally socialising, which they shouldn't be doing, obviously, with COVID and so on at the moment. Are there measures in place on that?
I can answer that. I mean, looking at the management plan, sets out that people, congregating outside of the hotel on Shepherd's Bush Road will be asked to disperse. And if there's a problem there or not, they will resort to police involvement if necessary. But staff will generally always speak to residents in the first instance and try to ensure that they're not loitering outside the premises. There's, say, it's staffed 24 hours a day. There's CCTV coverage outside to be able to be monitored. So there should not be people congregating as such. And then in terms of noise nuisance from particular rooms, there's regular building checks throughout a 24-hour period. So staff will be able to challenge any noise nuisance coming from particular rooms on the spot.
Okay, great, thanks. Just finally, I worked in the not-for-profit sector for the last, well, should we say 20 odd years now or more, and still do. I've done a certain amount of work with St Mungo's over the years at various meetings and things. They've always come across as a well-run, good organisation. I was surprised to see some of the criticism of them in the report. It doesn't quite ring true to my experience of working with them and other similar groups over the years. That's a comment rather than a question.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harcourt. Councillor Carmel, I can see you have your hand up, so I'd like to come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful. Having been or had the honour of being mayor of this borough, one of the things I did during my mayoral year was see some of the work that St Mungo's does, and my admiration is unbounded. However, I do have some concerns with these applications. Firstly, can I ask for? I've had a look at the report, but can I have some clarification about the intensification of hostile use in the immediate surroundings? Because I'm worried about, straws and camels' backs. How many hostile places are there within, say, 500 meters? Because notwithstanding the excellent work that St Mungo's does with trying to address the challenging behaviours that their clientele, by definition, have, the concentration in one particular area, as opposed to diasporizing the problem. Let me rephrase. No, problem is not the right word. Diasporizing the clients of St Mungo's, so they don't coalesce and create antisocial behaviour. I need some clarification as to, just because I heard what was her name? I think it's Lindsay, if I might call her that, saying that there is a concentration in the neighbourhood, and I am worried about the intensification.
Julia, sorry, I appreciate, Julia, you might not be able to give us the exact number, but can you give us some kind of indication of numbers in the Shepherd's Bush Road area and kind of the plans that are in place around the future of places in that area?
Yes, I mean, it's certainly true that since March last year, there has been an increase in the use of the hotels on Shepherd's Bush Road and in other parts of the borough, and indeed across the whole of London, for the use, the temporary use for homeless people. I think in total over 15,000 homeless people have been accommodated in the last year, and hotels have have been used. On Shepherd's Bush Road, we have a facility that's for 10 people, the Hammersmith and Fulham commissions, and that's at 118 Shepherd's Bush Road, that has been there for many years. It's been there for over, I believe, close to 30 years. The council is currently using the site at 77 to 79 Shepherd's Bush Road, which is the facility that St Mungo's is currently providing support on site. But the proposal is that will cease to be used should this planning application be successful. That is currently 38 bed spaces, so there would be an increase of 2 should the planning application be successful. We are aware that a central government department, the Home Office, is using a hotel further down or further up the road, and I think that has over 40, possibly 50 beds. 50. I don't quote me on that, but I think it has more than 40 bed spaces. We've sought some clarification from that department about when they plan to stop using it. They reassure us that it was always intended to be temporary. I think all of us did not anticipate that we would still be in the full throes of the pandemic now, 10, 11 months later. So they have indicated that their intention is for it to be temporary, likely to be late spring, early summer, but they don't intend to, at this stage anyway, continue to use it. There are a number of other hotels that Hammersmith we used at the height of the pandemic, so we were using 120 Shepherd's Bush Road, and I think it was 114 Shepherd's Bush Road, but we stopped using those many months ago. We do believe that maybe those hoteliers are using them to let to private guests, hotel guests, as permitted, in terms of the terms of that facility, that business. And yeah, so we commissioned 10 bed spaces plus this proposed planning application, and there are further temporary uses in operation in the area as described.
Through the chair, I could give a bit of a planning perspective as well, because there is an important point raised by Councillor Carmel that we do have to consider the number of other similar facilities in the locality and whether we feel there's a proliferation of them and over concentration with subsequent impacts then on residential amenity. From a planning perspective, well, through the application process and having considered this carefully, as our colleague Julie has just explained, it's important to us that we have to consider those that are regularised and operating and established, and in that respect there aren't that many outside the Home Office facilities in terms of the more local homeless facilities. There's the one at 118, which is for the 10 residents. Now the one at 75, 77, 79 with 38 residents, as Julia explained, and the intention is that will cease to operate if indeed this these two current applications are approved. We are aware, and we're well aware of the comments from residents, from a number of residents. I suppose it is possible the issue with homeless residents in this locality is more acute at the moment, given obviously hotels aren't able to operate as normal. Hopefully this situation will significantly change as we, move out of the current COVID restrictions. So it may be that some of these other hotels, which have been referenced, are operating in a more, if you like, hybrid use between a kind of standard hotel use with if you like, standard guests, for want of a better expression, and are maybe partially being used for homeless residents. And I guess the problem you have there is it's very difficult then for any operator to kind of manage and monitor and put in meaningful regulations and rules in those sort of situations, whereas this obviously offers an opportunity for us to formalise and regulise and have that kind of management in place, which we've looked at and we've considered. We've consulted the local police, who raised a number of comments in relation to the Good Neighbours Guide, and St Mungo's has certainly shown a willingness to as best they can address those concerns and meet the requirements and be as joined up as they possibly can also with the council and the new safer neighbourhood team that the council hopes to have in place by late May to actually have a more coordinated approach. So, in that respect, we don't feel that this is creating an over-concentration in this locality.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Councillor Carmel, can I come back to you?
Yes, thank you. I'm grateful, Chair. And in particular, in response, if I may go first with relation to what was said most lately by Mr. Butler, about the intention to cease to operate, and I think I lost track of the number. I think it's 138. There is no planning requirement, as far as I can see, that they have to cease to operate. So they can carry on operating were we to grant this permission, adding to the concentration within the area. And as I've said previously, I commend the work that St Mungo's does, but I worry about the concentration of the inevitable antisocial behaviour that occurs due to the nature of the clients that St Mungo's works so hard to try and address. But if I could go to paragraph 4.6 on page 16 of...
Sorry, Councillor, just before you move on, can we just get clarification of that then from officers? So obviously there's no obligation in this application that says that if this is granted permission, St Mungo's have to cease operating. I think it was 70 to 79, but again, I might have the number wrong as well. So is that, can I just confirm that just for the sake of committee's clarity?
Yeah, through the chair, it's Matt Butler again. Yeah, the numbers are 75, 77 to 79 Shepherd's Bush Road. That's correct. There's nothing in the recommendation before you that would secure, Councillor Carmel's quite right, that would secure the closure, or I shouldn't say closure, the cease of the use by St Mungo's at that particular facility. Julia, my colleague, may be able to say more and give more assurance to committee around the commitment to actually, cease use by St Mungo's of that facility. I think what is important for committee to be aware of, though, is that we weren't aware of that facility until this application was submitted. We'd received no complaints to planning. Therefore, we had not opened an investigation, if you like, into it. Obviously, if we were to investigate post this and they didn't relocate and they continued to operate despite this one being approved, then we'd need to check whether that actually needed regularising and there was a material change of use, and if so, they would therefore be liable to potential enforcement action.
Okay, thank you. Julia, did you want to add anything on that?
Yes, just a couple of points. At the moment, the arrangement is that the council makes the referrals to St Mungo's to place people there. We will be ceasing to make those referrals should the planning application be approved and we relocate the service, and St Mungo's won't have the funding that they require to staff the facility at 75 to 79, and it will revert to Mr. Saber, who owns the hotel. It will be him that decides how he uses that facility. St Mungo's will be, St Mungo's currently don't have an agreement to occupy that property. They don't have a lease. They're there because we've asked them to provide support on that site to homeless residents. They don't have a contract. They don't have a lease. So St Mungo's won't have any any way of continuing to sort of fund the services on that site. They don't receive housing benefit. They don't receive any rental income for the service at 75 to 79 Shepherd's Bush Road. And if I could just quickly add, I misled you on the numbers at the Home Office facility. It's actually 22, not 40 or 50. 22 bed spaces.
Thank you, Julia. Councillor Carmel, sorry to have interrupted you there.
No, that's quite all right. But I'm afraid those answers have raised rather more questions than I had anticipated. Am I to understand from what has been said that 75 to 79 is currently operating outside of its authorised planning permission? Am I also to understand that even if the use in its current format has been regularised, that even if St Mungo ceased to operate there, I think his name was Mr. Saba, has every right to go to another homelessness provider and do that. My principal concern on that item is that there is no control. I mean, one of the great benefits of this site is saying that if we authorise these two linked planning permissions tonight, 75 to 79 will cease. I see no powers involved in this application, or both applications, to ensure that it happens. And there is the danger, if one can categorize it as a danger, that both sites will operate because there are no powers to close down 75 to 79. And that leads to the question that I raised previously about the overconcentration. But that is just a comment as opposed to requiring an answer, because the officers have already answered that one in the affirmative. But if I could go back to the point I was trying to raise earlier on page 16, paragraph 4.6, and in particular the second bullet point. I listened carefully to the excellent speech by, I think his name was Adam, who was speaking on behalf of St Mungo's, and he was talking about the regular patrols, which local residents say that they have never seen. But the second bullet point, the response from St Mungo's says, we will not have security on site. Who exactly will be doing these patrols? Staffing numbers for people in these vulnerable situations are incredibly tight. Once you start sending out your existing staff on security patrols, then your staffing numbers are liable to breach the national requirements. And I wondered if I could have some clarity as to how neighbourhood amenity is going to be maintained with these security patrols, and yet they're not having any security on site.
Felicity, I can see you've got your hand up there. I don't know if you wanted to speak to staffing levels or patrols.
The latter, but perhaps if Adam or Julia want to speak to the staffing first, and then I can come in around the sort of wider concept of patrols.
Okay, well, Adam can't speak, but Julia, you can, so please go ahead.
Thank you. My understanding is that St Mungo's have sort of subsequently clarified that actually at night time there will be a combination of staff, security staff and support staff. So at night time there will be always a minimum of 3 members of staff comprising maybe 1 security staff or 2 support workers, or that could be flexible should circumstances require a different combination. It's true at night St Mungo's will not be leaving the property to do the daytime patrols of sort of circuit of the area. That wouldn't be considered to be safe for, potentially not safe for staff, or it could raise operational issues. But during the daytime, and daytime stretches from sort of early morning till well into the evening. I think by night time we're talking about after midnight, 11:30 onwards. There will be up to 7 to 10 members of staff on site. So we consider that to be more than adequate for 1 or 2 members of staff to do the course of the area 6 or 7 times a day, still leaving sufficient staff on site to patrol the hostel and to respond to issues in the hostel. Should I just say, we do regularly see that they submit weekly the locality logs, which show the staff who's gone out on patrol, which areas they've patrolled, who they've seen, the names of residents if they know who they are, what actions they've taken, and we get those logs every week, detailing the actions every day.
Sorry, Councillor.
Back on that very quickly, Chair.
I think Felicity has something to add.
Just on that particular point before it gets lost.
Okay.
Thank you. I have to say, somewhat concerned by the comment that it's not safe for staff. These are people who are trained in handling the vulnerable people who are in this location. If it's not safe for staff, how on earth is it supposed to be safe for local residents?
Apologies, that was Councillor Carmel. That might have been a slightly clumsy phrasing. It would mean we would need to leave at least 2 members of staff on site, because that would be, that would be important. You can't have a lone member of staff, so that would require 1 member of staff leaving the building and sort of patrolling the area, where they're more likely to encounter residents who are not living at the facility, and having to, what I think it poses the question, what could they usefully do if they saw a crowd of people, congregating that may or may not be known to them. They could only call the police. So it's in terms of that, their safety as a lone member of staff, sort of patrolling the area late at night.
Felicity, did you want to add anything further?
Yes, just to say that as has been mentioned previously, we will be employing a neighbourhood enforcement team commencing April-May, and that will constitute almost double what we have now, and that will be 72 officers who will work across the borough. And so in terms of that wider community safety aspect, the aspect of potential antisocial behaviour that may spill onto streets or may occur in surrounding areas, that's where the neighbourhood enforcement team will be, I believe, a real asset in supporting residents. There'll be a link point for residents, but also for St Mungo's, both in terms of intelligence and, excuse me, reporting back on any issues, but also they'll have enforcement powers if they need to undertake those where required. So I think that will provide a little bit of additional resource to this issue.
Thank you, Felicity. Councillor Carmel, did you have anything further?
Well, I'll try and be brief to go on. I note that on page 23, they on paragraph 6.28, they only talk about doing perimeter checks as opposed to area checks. I see nothing in the conditions that requires area checks. I see nothing that states the frequency and the timings of said checks. I am slightly concerned about paragraph 6.31 on page 23 about the lack of community consultation. St Mungo's are well aware through their long history of trying to help the most vulnerable in our society that the proposals to site a facility in an area is likely to cause some concern in the locality. I wondered, could officers tell me about the statement of community involvement that the applicants have submitted with regard to the number of local residents that were consulted and the results of those consultations by St Mungo's as opposed to the consultation by the local authority.
Neil, are you able to speak to that?
Yes, I can. There wasn't any pre-application engagement with the local community from St Mungo's in this instance.
Can you tell me what the NPPF says about early consultation with communities to try and ensure that planning applications are dealt with fairly with both the applicant and with the local community involved?
I don't have it in front of me, but I mean, certainly engagement with the local community is something that is, it's recognised that there are benefits to that, and it is certainly something that we recommend if at all possible. It's not mandatory, but you know, it is certainly, if there is the opportunity to do it, we would always recommend the people who do that.
And could you remind me, you know, and if you give me 2 minutes, I'll go and look it up online, what the council's own statement of community involvement says is both is required for planning applications of this type. I don't even need to look it up because I can tell you, but go ahead yourself, Mr. Edgerton.
Oh, well, I will have to look it up, I'm afraid.
It says early engagement with.
Sorry, Councillor Carmel. Councillor Carmel, can I just interrupt you there? I don't think we need to each repeat policies verbatim. I think Mr. Edgerton's made the point that pre-app consultation is always encouraged by the planning department, and is ideal and should have been considered in this case. I think is that right, Neil? Is kind of
I mean, I think there certainly are definitely recognised the benefits to engaging with the local community. It can allow issues to be ironed out at an early stage and make for a much smoother process. In many cases, it does happen, but it does not happen in all cases.
Okay, thank you, Neil.
With the greatest respect, and I understand totally, Chair, your position. I think that you slightly underpaid the severity of language that is included in LBHF's statement of community involvement. I believe the wording is strongly advised, and St Mungo's being a charity that has worked in this area for many years will be well aware about some of the prejudices that local communities have, and this particular prejudices can be assuaged by early consultation with the local neighbourhood and to changes to a planning application to stop some of the more prevalent concerns of the local neighbourhood being carried out. And I am quite frankly surprised that an organisation of St Mungo's history have failed, given that they know what the local neighbours are likely to say, to engage with them properly to try and assuage their fears. And it comes as little surprise to me that we are here at this committee with so many objections. And that I put it to you that is a comment rather than a question.
Thank you. Matt, can I come to you? I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. If it helps committee, a large thrust behind pre-application engagement with the local community is that developers can take on board any concerns and comments from the community before the application is submitted, and therefore once it is submitted, then it can be dealt with in a timely manner and within the statutory targets that are set, and one that is generally going to be supported by the residents and the council. I mean, what we've had in this instance is almost been a case of doing that work post-submission. I can't answer as to why St Mungo's didn't engage in community, pre-application community engagement. What I can advise committee is that since submission of the application, we've engaged in a great deal of dialogue, both with St Mungo's directly and via our colleagues, Julia and Felicity, post-submission, and indeed, as I referenced earlier, the local police officers, in terms of taking on board the concerns raised by residents, the local police and others, and sought to address those in an appropriate fashion with the collaboration of St Mungo's, which has brought around changes to the management plan, for example, and more clarity around other aspects of the proposal. So it's not like this has just come in and there's been no changes and we simply carried on. There has been a lot of probably the stuff that may have happened at the pre-application stage has happened post-submission. Hence, we've had the application for quite a while.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Councillor Perez, I believe you have a question. Can I come to you next?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you please tell me what steps does St Mungo's take with repeat offenders in the event that one of the clients is a repeat offender and that has been identified? What steps does St Mungo's take in terms of, for example, the occupancy agreement that they may have in place? I mean, how bad does the behavior need to be before steps are taken? Just some clarification on that, please.
Julia, if I can come to you on that one.
Thank you. I mean, the occupancy agreement will set out the expectations that every resident, must adhere to. I guess it depends. There's not a straightforward answer. It will depend on the nature of the transgression of what rules are breached. In the very extreme, some incidents, some incidents could lead to immediate eviction. Extremely serious issues that put other people at risk, staff, residents, community, local businesses. It could lead to an immediate eviction, and the type of occupancy agreement that will be in place will allow that, will enable that. Then the partners will then obviously need to get, we'll need to put a plan in place to ensure that that person isn't just evicted from the accommodation and then stays in the locality to create more nuisance and annoyance in the area. So that's when we would work together to sort of try and find a more long-term solution for that individual. For other issues, sometimes residents' behaviour can actually be more of a harm to themselves than other people. But absolutely, where rules have been breached, too much noise, hanging around outside, causing disruption to other residents, the neighbourhood, then there'll be a sliding scale, verbal warnings, written warnings, and ultimately could lead to somebody losing their accommodation. It is intended as very short-term accommodation. So actually, the intention is to get, for people to move in and to quickly engage with services to find a more long-term sustainable solution. We find if people are sort of staying in a service longer, sometimes that can lead to more problems. So that the emphasis will be on helping people resolve their issues quickly and moving on. And for many individuals who move in, they'll be absolutely really grateful for the support and will engage and won't need any warnings. But for the numbers who do, there'll be a clear process in place that will depend on the severity and the type of incident.
Thank you very much. And another question, please. So how does St Mungo's work with the police? So as a ward councillor for Shepherd's Bush Green, which is close to the area, I know in the past police have raised some concerns about people sitting on the green during the pandemic. During COVID-19 times, it's not a drinking zone. People cannot congregate and drink there. Of course, right now it's winter, that won't happen. But as it starts to get warmer, people may use the green to do that. So my question is, are residents made aware of local policy as well and local restrictions at local level so that they do not generate problems or aggravate a situation that's already very intense because of the pandemic? Around the green, for example, which actually goes beyond the immediate area of where the accommodation will be.
Julia, are we able to come to you on that one in terms of St Mungo's policies on street drinking, but also letting residents know about what the options are in the local area?
Certainly, I can address part of it. If I could then ask my colleague Felicity Charles in the community safety team, who leads on our relationship with our working relationship with the police. Certainly a key role of St Mungo's over the last sort of 10-11 months, and organisations like St Mungo's has been talking to residents about their responsibilities in relation to COVID. And you know, a huge amount of work has been done on social distancing, and you know, all work that we've been all working hard to achieve. And that's a follow on from the work that they're doing pre-COVID, during COVID, on the rules around street drinking and their responsibilities to not cause nuisance and annoyance in the community. So it's a continuation of that work. The police are a key partner, not just for the council, but also for St Mungo's. And I think if I could just hand over to Felicity, if you don't mind, Felicity, to expand upon that, that would be helpful.
Certainly, thanks, Julia. So we do have a public spaces protection order, which is across the whole borough, which prohibits alcohol-related antisocial behaviour. And as part of that having been implemented in October this year, we developed an engagement and enforcement plan, which is been signed up by ourselves and police, which looks at how we engage and also, I should say, linked in with our substance use services, as well as St Mungo's and other, housing related providers, to look at how we address this issue in a partnership way, starting with engagement and offers of support, but also leading up to enforcement where that's appropriate. And we have panel meetings that look at how we can have a collective approach around that. I do really believe that when we have our new neighbourhood enforcement team in place, we'll really be able to enhance the offer that PSPO engagement plan allows us to have. And that will allow us to, build our intelligence around that and take, targeted action against individuals where that's appropriate, ensuring that balance between support and enforcement where that's required.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Perez, did you have anything further on that?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sadiq, if I can come to you next.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding to the security and the antisocial behavior, and what sort of measures or arrangements or contract is in place to ensure if there is any authorized SIA supervised, or the person who can deal, who's authorized from the SIA security officer, can deal 24-hour this issue on the premises. I understand there is the police patrol, extra police patrol. I understand they have an alarm system. I understand they have the extra their manpower, but probably they are not authorized or not trained by the SIA to deal with their occupants. So is there any? And secondly, regarding to the place, second question is regarding to they mentioned during their the officers during their briefing, there is the space in front of the premises building, and which could be used potentially for the antisocial behavior, drinking alcohol or partying or socializing, probably. Or is there any arrangement or signs or anything which can prevent them not to use the place?
So the first question is what kind of arrangements are in place for staffing and security at this location? And
I'll rephrase, if there is any SIA supervised or authorized security officer will be available over there on this quite big premises, which is like quite big occupants will be over there. Obviously, there is 2 premises they are going to join, if is allowed, and apart from their staff.
So what securities are in place apart from the actual daytime staff?
That's right.
Okay.
And SIA SIA authorized, from the SIA, which are specially trained security officers.
Right, got it. Julia, are you able to speak to that?
I'll be honest, I'm not certain of the technicality, whether or not the security staff that are St Mungo's are employed. They do use a security agency. So they have their own staff that are directly employed by St Mungo's, and they're obviously managers, support workers, people who are trained in primarily support work. But also a lot of the work around managing behaviour isn't always required as sort of a security focus. It's also about having excellent communication skills, understanding how to diffuse situations, developing relationships with residents. A lot of that kind of work can actually be is around diffusing a situation rather than kind of taking a sort of an enforcement security approach. So I suppose it's really important to convey that the vast majority of staff, or St Mungo's staff, are able to manage many situations like that and do it very well and do it very bravely. My understanding is that they do employ a security agency to provide staff at night. What I don't know for certain is if they have the specific qualification that I think Councillor Siddiqui is asking me. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, and then the next question was what measures are in place to prevent kind of gathering and ASB immediately outside the location?
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of go there. I mean, the management plan clearly recognises that there is this space outside on Shepherd's Bush Road, and recognise the people congregating outside there will be asked to disperse, and the staff will speak to residents who are doing that in the first place. I mean, there is an office at ground floor level to the front of the building for both sites, and CCTV covering the front and inside of the property. So any activities taking place outside will be immediately obvious to staff, who will ensure that the occupants or the residents are moved on and stop congregating and causing any issues outside the site.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Siddiq, does that partly answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And is like a just comment. If there is a qualified authorized security person is available over there 24 hours, probably they can more manage the premises in front of the property, and they can obviously diffuse the situation if there's any problem, if despite all the time calling the police, or they'll have their own security authorized and qualified security who can deal with that. Probably there's a quite large number of occupants.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Harvey, I can see you have your hand up as well. If I can come to you next.
Yeah, hello. I have got 3 very brief questions, really. One is for Felicity. Will the officers that will be doing the patrolling from April, May, will they be going around Brook Green as well? Because I've had a few people quite concerned about Brook Green and people going to the park and loitering around there drinking. My second question is to Julia. With the license, with the residents, will they be on license? So they won't actually, if they do need to be removed from the premises, they won't need to go through a court process to do that. It will be quite straightforward. And also for Julia, my final question is, with residents, will they have an opportunity to feed in somewhere along the line concerns as the months go by, so that there's sort of a, not a consultation, but a feedback process happening?
Okay, so if we can come to what measures are in place to prevent ASB and street drinking in Brook Green first, if we can come to that question first.
Certainly. Hello, Councillor Harvey. Yeah, the answer in short is yes, absolutely. We'll make sure, well, not we'll make sure, though the neighbourhood enforcement team will absolutely be intelligence led, and that intelligence will come from people like yourselves, residents, inquiries, police data, so that we can make sure that we're targeting all those areas where there are concerns. So absolutely.
And the second question was regarding, I guess, not all residents will be on licence, but I mean, some could potentially be. That was the question, wasn't it, Councillor Harvey?
I I took that, Councillor Harvey, your question to mean the licence, the occupancy agreement, rather than a criminal licence.
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought that's what you meant. Apologies. So you meant the licence of the property?
Yes, because that goes to how quickly someone can be
Absolutely.
removed if they do cause problems.
Thank you.
It's a very temporary form of accommodation, so it is. I don't know if this is the correct legal term, but sort of a bare license. You know, it's absolutely a license agreement to occupy the premises. Yeah, not a tenancy agreement. And in terms of the issue about us ongoing engagement with the local community, I mean, absolutely, and I think St Mungo's has already started that work, and I think, you know, attendance at ward panel meetings is 20. I will be monitoring the responses they get to the 24-hour complaint line. I want St Mungo's to give me details of those, the types of complaints. You know, we will be monitoring that. You know, I think going forward we need to have you know, more dialogue with local residents. So obviously, my contact details, you know, other colleagues in my team, you know, I think we would encourage residents to approach us directly, you know, with concerns. Absolutely, it's part of what we'll be doing to monitor the effectiveness or otherwise of this service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I actually can't see any hands at the moment, so I'm just going to come in with a quick one of my own. Sorry, Councillor Carmel, I can see you've got your hand up now, but I'm just going to indulge myself really quickly. Is anyone able to speak to the kind of the rationale of this application coming at this time and the need that's been identified in the borough? So what is the purpose behind seeking this this new application at this time, and is it to meet specific need in the community? If anyone's able to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I can respond to that, Councillor Layton. Certainly, there has been an increase in people approaching the council for assistance over a number of years. Actually, I think that COVID has exacerbated problems for certain parts of the community, and new groups of people have experienced homelessness over the last 10 or 11 months who perhaps previously weren't as affected by it. Rough sleeping in Hammersmith and Fulham went up. We've actually done some really good work over the last few years to reduce rough sleeping, but the numbers of rough sleepers in 2019-20 did increase by 56% compared to the previous years. What that means, that increase, doesn't mean that we have a 56% increase of people actually sleeping on the streets, because it is absolutely our priority, a strategic priority, to ensure that we have facilities, we have accommodation, that we can get people off the streets and into quickly. This planning application is to address that absolute issue. What we've needed since COVID, it's a different type of accommodation. We need self-contained rooms. Previously, we've accommodated homeless people with shared facilities, but self-contained accommodation is now key, and this accommodation provides that requirement.
Thank you, Julia. And if I can just ask as well, is there any intention to give homeless Hammersmith and Fulham residents priority access to this location?
Yes, more than half of the residents in the facility, in the property, will be from Hammersmith and Fulham, probably nearer 60%.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Carmel, can I come back to you? Councillor Carmel, can you hear me?
I can. I'm sorry. The children have been allowed their post-supper iPads, and I think they're stealing my bandwidth.
Oh.
So I hope that you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Good. I would just like to suggest an additional condition or an amendment to an existing condition, should this application be approved. I note that condition 1 states that this is temporary for a limited period only until the 30th of November 2023, but I would like to also propose that in the event that this application is subject to another application to extend that temporary permission, that it must come back to this committee, because more often than not, when in my long experience of this committee, that extensions to temporary permissions sometimes sort of sneak through, and I think it's only fair to the residents of the area that were this application to be granted, that they have the comfort of knowing that were there to be an application to extend this temporary permission, that it will come back to this committee, so we can, as a committee, judge the effects of this this facility.
Poonam, can I just double check with you that there's no difficulty in amending that particular condition? I'm sure there isn't, but I just want to double check with you.
I was actually going to just raise that openly with planning to see if they have a concern. I was just thinking of it in another way, that given the public interest, it would come back to committee in any event. But thinking about an actual condition, at this moment in time, I can't see a huge difficulty in it, but I'll leave it to my planning colleagues to point out if I am incorrect in my consideration of that. But I would have thought it would have come back to committee in any event.
Okay, thank you, Poonam. Neil or Matt, is there any problem with that? Is that condition going to be workable for you?
No, I mean, sorry, through the chair, it's Matt here.
Yes.
No, I mean, it's not uncommon. I'm sure Councillor Carmel has made similar requests in the past, and there isn't an issue as far as I'm aware with doing that. It'll be noted if it's indeed endorsed by the committee, then it'll be noted in the minutes, and we will certainly make a record on our files and the database that if an application comes in for an extension, then it will need to be reported to committee.
Okay, thank you. Neil, did you have anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I think I would agree that given the public interest in the application, I would assume that if any application came in to extend this, that we would definitely have to bring it back to the committee for a determination.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Carmel, would you like to formally propose that amendment?
Formally propose.
Would anyone like to formally second that for Councillor Carmel?
Chair, I'm very happy to second.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thorley. Councillor Carmel, did you have anything else apart from that amendment?
I think I could go on, but I think we've covered the major issues.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anyone else have anything further before we move to voting? I'm not seeing any hands, but I'm just going to give you a moment. Okay, in which case then, if I can take our vote first on Councillor Carmel's proposed amendment to condition 1, which I'm sure someone will be able to put it in some better language for us, but it essentially says that if an extension beyond November 2023, I think is the date, if an extension beyond that is applied for, that any such application would need to come back to this committee. So that's the proposed amendment from Councillor Carmel. So if I can just ask each committee member to give me their vote on that particular amendment. So you just need to let me know whether you're for or against that amendment to condition 1, or indeed if you're not voting at all. So Councillor Ahern, if I can come to you first.
For.
Okay, and Councillor Harcourt?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Carmel?
It's my amendment.
Lovely. Councillor Perez?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sadiq?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Thorley?
For, Chair.
Councillor, Councillor Harvey, I'm really sorry, I've missed you off there.
It's okay. For.
Thank you very much. And I also vote for that amended condition as well. So in which case then, If I can move on to recommendation 1 in the report, which you will find on page 9. I'm going to take first, I should clarify for committee. So there's obviously 2 applications that we're voting on. So you'll have to bear with me while I go through the motions of voting on all these different recommendations. So we're going to start with 101 to 103 Shepherd's Bush Road. And recommendation 1 in the report, which you can find on page 9, noting the addendum, which reads that the committee resolves that the Chief Planning Officer be authorised to grant permission subject to the conditions listed below. So Councillor Ahern, if I can come to you first.
4.
Councillor Harcourt?
4.
Councillor Harvey?
4.
Councillor Carmel?
With regret, against.
Councillor Perez?
4.
Councillor Sadiq?
4.
Councillor Thorley?
Against.
And I also vote for that recommendation, which brings us to recommendation 2 in the report, which you can also find on page 9, noting the addendum. And that reads that the committee resolves that the Chief Planning Officer, after consultation with the head of law and the chair of the Planning and Development Control Committee, be authorised to make any minor changes to the proposed conditions, which may include the variation, addition or deletion of conditions. Any such changes shall be within their discretion. So, Councillor Ahern.
4.
Councillor Harcourt.
Sorry, 4.
Councillor Harvey.
4.
Councillor Carmel.
4.
Councillor Perez.
4.
Councillor Sadiq.
4.
Councillor Thorley.
4.
And I also vote for that recommendation. So that is that application approved. In which case then, if we can move on to item 5, which is 105 Shepherd's Bush Road. If I can draw your attention to recommendation 1 in the report on page 29, also noting the addendum, and that reads that the committee resolves that the Chief Planning Officer be authorised to grant permission subject to the conditions listed below. So Councillor Ahern.
4.
Councillor Harcourt.
4.
Councillor Harvey.
4.
Councillor Carmel.
Against.
Councillor Perez.
4.
Councillor Sadiq.
4.
Councillor Thorley.
Against.
And I also vote for that recommendation, which finally brings us on to recommendation 2 in the report, again on page 29, if you note the addendum, that reads that the committee resolves that the Chief Planning Officer, after consultation with the head of law and the chair of the Planning and Development Control Committee, be authorised to make any minor changes to the proposed conditions, which may include the variation, addition or deletion of conditions. Any such changes shall be within their discretion. So, Councillor Ahern.
4.
Councillor Harcourt.
4.
Councillor Harvey.
4.
Councillor Carmel.
4.
Councillor Perez.
4.
Councillor Sadiq.
4.
Councillor Thorley.
4.
And I also vote for that recommendation as well. And so that is that application approved as well. In which case then, if we move on to item 6, which is Walpole Court, if I can ask the presenting officer, Neil Edgerton, to please introduce the report. And Neil, I'll just give you a moment just to share your screen with us.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, hopefully you can see the image now.
Yes, we can see. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Chair. The application relates to Walpole Court on Blythe Road. This proposal is for the installation of 3 freestanding frames to support 6 antennas on 3-metre poles and 1 300mm dish on a 1-metre support pole. Installation of 12 remote radio units near the antennas and 2 equipment cabinets at roof level. The application premises is a 6-storey council block of flats, which is located on the south side of Blythe Road between Girdlers Road and Aynhoe Road. The application site is located within the Lakeside, Sinclair, Blythe Road conservation areas. Some views of the site. This is obviously the aerial view to the north. And the aerial view south. And then from the street, so this from Blythe Road looking towards Girdlers. And again from Girdlers Road. And then fairly long range view from Blythe Road. This is the existing, excuse me, existing roof plan at the moment. You see, obviously, there's vents, chimneys here, and the main sort of central block of the building. The proposal is that the support structures will be in these 3 corners of the building, with the antennas, poles displayed on each. So that's the existing elevation from the front, and then the proposed elevation, as you can see, there would be pole and antenna there, and a second one sort of further back on that elevation. It's been asked for because it is considered by the companies there is a very poor signal reception in the area, and therefore they're looking to boost that. It would be primarily for 4G/5G activities on the site, and officers recommend that planning permission be granted for the development, subject to the conditions listed below. Thank you.
Okay, Neil, thank you very much. We have no speakers on this item. So if I can move on to any members' questions at all. Does any member have any questions on this item? Councillor Thorley, I can see your hand there.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, my bandwidth has been taken up probably by Councillor Carmel's kids as well, so if I go, I'm sorry. Just a few quick questions, if I may. Neil, you mentioned that the site was for use for 4 to 5G.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that 5G is still in development and they're rolling it out. What conditions have we got linked to this planning application that, if you will, limit the variation of what is already there? Because there is a problem, as I'm aware, where telecom communicators put material on a site, and under the lease they are permitted to add to it, and in some cases the lease permits it to be added quite substantially. So what assurance do we have under the planning application before us that that won't happen?
I mean, obviously the application before us is just for the equipment and plant that is shown at the moment. If there's further plant required, then that would need a further application. I don't know what their lease arrangements are. I can't comment on that, I'm afraid.
But it is my understanding occasionally they can add equipment onto the antenna. In effect, what we are being asked to permit, you are entitled to add to. Obviously, I appreciate you haven't seen the lease, but that is a problem that I'm aware other people have experienced before. It's just your understanding that any variation, any new equipment, any modification of what is in front of us tonight would require a new planning consent.
I think they would need to certainly seek at least prior approval from the council or planning permission. The guidance does recommend, obviously, that facilities are shared as much as possible in order to limit the amount of equipment at roof level. And, you know, there certainly have been cases where other applications have come in on other sites to increase the number of antennas or dishes or poles. Those have always been judged on their merits at the time.
I would also, sorry, through the chair, draw Councillor Thorley's attention to the conditions as well. There is a condition 2 that they have to carry out the development as shown in the plans, and also condition 3 regarding sort of removal.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like if any additional equipment were added or any taller antennae that there may, and permission wasn't sought, then that would be an enforcement action issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're liable.
Okay. Thank you both. Councillor Thorley, do you have anything further?
The only other questions I had linked to maintenance and metering, so I'm happy to come back to those later. Okay.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carmel, can I come to you next?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just a little surprised as to why this application is here, and I haven't checked the planning application, but can I just ask, is this an application, and forgive me if I get it wrong, under the Town and Country Planning General?
Oh, I think we've lost Councillor Carmel there. Okay, let's move on, and if Councillor Carmel is able to rejoin us, then we'll come back to his question. Councillor Harcourt, can I come to you?
Yes, thank you. I'm uncertain, I suppose, really, as to whether this is really a declaration of interest or not. I'm inclined to think not. But my other role in this council is that of Cabinet Member for the Environment. And I've certainly received a number of emails over the last period of time from residents about 5G, regardless of whether I agree with the various stories about it, etc. To some extent, the jury is still out on what it does. And as such, informally, certainly, there's been a policy within highways, for instance, not to allow any 5G equipment to be located on street columns, etc., etc. So I think, in light of that, I'll abstain from voting, but don't think I'm going to declare that as a formal interest.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harcourt. Councillor Carmel, I can see that you've been able to rejoin us. Did you want to try and pose your question again?
Thank you. I don't know if you heard anything I said last time,
No.
but I was inquiring as to why this was at committee, because I have to admit, gone to the planning file and checked the actual definition of the application. But forgive me if I make mistakes on this. But is this an application under the, forgive me, the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development England Order 2015 as amended under Schedule Q, Part 16, Class A? And if so, why is it at committee? And if not, under what auspices has it been submitted?
So easy question there, Neil. Why is this application at committee?
This is an application for planning permission. It has not been submitted under the General Permitted Development Order, and therefore
to which the...
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, why? I mean, most phone masts are under the GPDOs. Why is this one not under GPDOs, and what is special about it that it is a formal planning application?
That is the route that the applicants have chosen to take. They have submitted the full application for this development. Therefore, we treat it as a full application and deal with it accordingly.
Yeah, I would add through the chair that telecom operators should, well, my experience is they go through their own sort of due diligence process, and if they can do something under the prior approval process and avoid a formal planning application, then they will certainly pursue that route. We have a statutory responsibility to process a planning application if it's valid and they've submitted all the necessary documentation. We can, if we, through the process, determine or consider it actually falls under permitted development, then that would be a material consideration, and it wouldn't seem that logical to therefore refuse an application or recommend one for refusal if it was going to committee. I would safely assume and advise committee in this instance that I would very much expect that for various reasons this falls outside what would be captured under the prior approval and permitted development procedure, because there are thresholds regarding, for example, the height of masts and so forth, and the number of respective equipment. I don't have the detail to hand, so I can't answer directly Councillor Carmel's question around what sort of differentiates what's before committee now and what would qualify as permitted development. I can't answer that detailed question, but in all likelihood, this does fall outside the threshold set within the general permitted development order.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Councillor Carmel, does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Councillor Harcourt, did you have anything further? Sorry.
No, sorry, no.
No, okay, fine. You're on mute, sorry, Councillor.
I give up with this machine. Sorry, that was my one statement only. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why I wasn't going to make any further comment.
Sorry. Yeah, no problem. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions on this application? Councillor Thorley, did you want to come back in on access and maintenance?
If that's okay, Chair.
Yeah.
Just two very quick questions, really, Neil. First regards not the installation of the equipment, the maintenance of the equipment. My understanding is these sites, even though they claim it's relatively low maintenance, do require greater maintenance than perhaps is initially disclosed. I just wonder, given this is a controlled access site, how access would be obtained, how prior approvals would be needed, and also, what consideration have we given to what impact this rather regularly accessing through the building to the roof could have on residential amenity?
Right. I mean, obviously, it is a council-owned block, therefore the access to maintain the equipment, or to install and to maintain the equipment, would have to be something that was negotiated with the council as the landowner. I'm not party to any discussions that have taken place there. That was something that'll have to fit in with what is judged to be acceptable by the housing department.
So, sorry, just in terms of residential amenity, then there's no concern from a planning perspective that the increased site visit would impact on residents' quiet enjoyment of the property.
I mean, my limited experience in terms of maintenance and control on those sites. I mean, I've led to believe that that there's fairly limited access required in terms of maintenance. Like all equipment, it will have to be checked at times, but I don't believe there would be such a significant frequency of access required that would cause concern or harm to residential amenity. No.
The reason I ask is probably ought to know as well, I have masts on buildings I'm responsible for managing, and I find that access is more frequent than perhaps I would like. That might be a gripe of mine personally, but there are issues in terms of cabling up buildings, fire safety provisions and so on, which causes me a bit of concern here, particularly if this is at the moment an exclusively residential block. One other issue I wanted to flag was, again, just for clarification, is how will this be metered? Because again, what we don't want to have happen here is the application site is approved and then electricity is taken off the building and somehow this is not properly allocated the applicant site. What consideration has been given to that? So, sorry, I had problems with my speaker. Could you repeat the question? Apologies. Yeah. Is there an individual meter point recording what electricity the site uses?
I'm afraid I can't answer that. I'm sure that is something that will form part of their lease if they get consent to install the plant on the building.
Okay, if I could just request that is looked at carefully, because I think that's an important consideration. And then final comment from me, in terms of the application, what assessment have we made in terms of noise impact and so on? What assurance could we give both while the site is being constructed and when it's operational that the residential amenity will not be impacted on that side?
I'm not aware of any specific noise problems that come from these sites. You know, it's a fairly slender structure that's going up there. I don't have any specific information with regards to that, but it's not something that I've been aware has caused a problem in the past with any such installation, certainly one of this scale.
Okay, that's all from me, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thorley. Councillor Harvey, can I come to you next?
Yeah, thank you. My question's for Neil. There's a lot of residents that live in Walpole, and I think there may be some that would be quite concerned about the mask being put on the building due to health concerns. So is there any research or anything that that addresses those concerns so that we can reassure residents? And if it is approved, then will some information be provided to residents so they know that there aren't any health concerns or risks?
Right. I mean, with a telecommunications installation or proposal such as this, one of the requirements that they need to provide is an International Commission on Non-Ionising Radiation Protection Declaration. This would certify the site is designed to be in full compliance with the requirements of the radio frequency guidelines of the ICNIRP for public exposure, as set out in EU Council recommendation July 1999. I mean, this declaration has to take into account the cumulative effect of all emissions from the proposed installation and any other base stations present at or near the proposed location. I mean, the applicants have provided such certification as part of the application. I mean, the national sort of planning guidance sort of advises us that we have to take that as face value, and that local authorities should not be sort of coming up with their own, I suppose, their own levels of health matters in terms of these sort of issues. I mean, it's recognised that it is a concern to residents always. There is so much misinformation out there about the effects of, you know, 4G, 5G, etc. So it is very different. There's a lot of scare tactics, but you know, I think we have to mind the national planning policy framework that is there, and therefore they feel that the health levels is something that has to be set up by central government. There's not something for local authorities to take into account.
Councillor Harvey, does that answer your question?
It does, apart from the second part, which was really how can we reassure residents? So, you know, if we approve it tonight, then residents become concerned when they start seeing the masks being put up. Will there be any information provided to them to reassure them that I mean, there wouldn't be anything sent out by ourselves. I mean, the documentation submitted with the application includes the information, includes this statement on its compliance with the guidelines. That is public document that they're able to see. I mean, that really would be the information that would be available for the residents, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Perhaps if there's not an avenue for the planning committee to offer reassurance to residents of this block, there might be an avenue by which ward councillors can liaise with officers to maybe write to residents about the installation and kind of the timeline and what that means. Because I imagine that there's probably nothing that the planning department can do, but there might be other avenues whereby other departments can offer kind of information and reassurance.
That'd be really helpful.
Maybe just a thought. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on this application? I don't see any hands, but I'll give you a moment. No, in which case we'll move to voting. Councillor Harcourt, I've noted that you're not voting, so I won't come to you.
Abstaining.
Abstaining, sorry, yes, thank you. Okay, in which case then, I'll move on to the voting. I will be asking if each of the recommendations in the report are agreed, and then call on each member in turn to give their vote. So please respond with either a for, against, or not voting. So recommendation 1 in the report you can find on page 48. Please also note the addendum, and that first recommendation reads that the committee resolved that the Chief Planning Officer be authorised to grant permission subject to the conditions listed below. So, Councillor Ahern.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Carmel.
Not voting.
Okay, Councillor Perez.
For.
Councillor Siddiq.
For.
Councillor Thorley.
Against.
Okay, and I also vote for that recommendation. So if I can come to recommendation 2 in the report, which reads that the committee resolved that the Chief Planning Officer, after consultation with the head of law and the chair of the Planning and Development Control Committee, be authorised to make any minor changes to the proposed conditions, which may include the variation, addition or deletion of conditions. Any such changes shall be within their discretion. So Councillor Ahern.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Carmel.
For.
Councillor Perez.
For.
Councillor Siddiq.
For.
Councillor Thorley.
For.
And I also vote for the recommendation, so that is that application approved. In which case then, if we can move on to item 7, which is, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Sudan Road. So if I can ask the presenting officer, Roy Isagba Power, to please introduce the report, and Roy will just pause a moment while we wait for you to share your screen.
Thank you, Chair.
With all due respect, Chair, can I just say this is a full Reg 3 application. I, for one, would be happy with a very much abbreviated presentation.
Okay, Roy, I'm sure you'll do what you can for us in terms of brevity.
I will. Thank you very much, Chair. In short, an application outside 547 to 551 Fulham Road, use of part of the public highway for a temporary market stall to sell flowers. This is the site in red, shown on the plan. The site itself is in the town centre. On the opposite side of the road is the Fulham Broadway shopping centre, and the site highlighted in orange, which tapers to the south, is Fulham Town Hall, the listed building, just to show its sort of location. And then just south of the site is a pedestrian walk, and that is Sudan Road, which is a cul-de-sac. This just giving you context, the site in red again, highlighting where the Fulham Town Hall is in blue, and the wider area is the Walham Green Conservation Area. This is a shot westward, showing in the foreground, the 5-storey block of flats, which is on the junction with Fulham Road and Sudan Road. This is a closer shot at the pedestrian crossing, 2 gentlemen just about to cross the road. On the right-hand side of is the telephone box, just about where the stall would be. And this is the view from Sudan Road, which is a cul-de-sac looking towards the shopping centre. So in terms of considerations, we've done some site and press notices, 128 letters, no objections. In principle, it's an appropriate town centre use that contributes to the vitality. Design, it's proposed modest scale of development, no harm to the heritage assets nearby. No objections from highways, and no noise objections from the noise team, and therefore we're recommending that permission be granted as per page 60.
Thank you very much, Roy. Okay, in which case, we've got no speakers on this item, so do members have any questions on this application? Councillor Harcourt, go ahead.
Yep, thanks. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've got no problem with this whatsoever. But given that we are in the middle of the pandemic and the issues around social distancing and making sure that everything is COVID compliant and so on. Appreciate we may not be able to do this as a condition, but can we attach an informative reminding whoever the stallholder is of the need to do their best, use their best efforts to make sure there's social distancing when people are queuing and face masks and such like?
Yeah, I mean,
it has been a bit of an issue at other markets and stalls in the borough.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there is a license required from the trading team, and we would issue that. And there's advice on the council's website on its pages relating to markets, which gives us clear advice about social distancing, 2 metres, etc., and masks. And we can certainly put an informative on, which if the committee are minded to do so. The only thing I should have pointed out in the presentation was that the hours have changed. It's part of the addendum. From 9 to 6 p.m, which was originally proposed, to 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. So they've been slightly extended.
Okay, thank you very much, Roy. Thank you, Councillor Harcourt. Does anyone else have any comments or questions on this application at all? No, I'm not seeing any hands. Okie dokie then, in which case then we can move on to the voting. So if I can draw your attention to, as Roy says, page 60, and if you can also note the addendum as well. And again, I'll be asking if each of the recommendations in the report are agreed, and then I'll be calling on each member in turn to give their vote. So recommendation 1, you'll find on page 60, and that reads...
Is the informative agreed, by the way, Chair?
Thank you, Councillor Harcourt. I did actually just ask for some advice on that. Oh, good. There we go. Lovely. All right. Thank you. I'm taking it then that we don't need to... This is my first informative as Chair of Planning and Development Control Committee. I take it we don't need to do a full member vote on an informative. Hopefully someone can tell me one way or the other, yes or no.
Look, if everybody just agrees it and doesn't raise an objection, we can take it as
All right,
read.
good. Thank you. Lovely. So that's your informative agreed, Councillor Harcourt. So back to recommendation 1, that the committee resolve that the Chief Planning Officer be authorised to grant temporary planning permissions subject to the conditions listed below. So Councillor Ahern.
For.
Councillor Harcourt.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Carmel.
For.
Councillor Perez.
For.
Councillor Sadiq.
For.
Councillor Thorley.
For.
And I also vote for that recommendation. And then if I can draw your attention to recommendation 2 in the report, also on page 60, noting the addendum that reads that the committee resolves that the Chief Planning Officer, after consultation with the Head of Law and the Chair of the Planning and Development Control Committee, be authorised to make any minor changes to the proposed conditions, which may include the variation, addition or deletion of conditions. Any such changes shall be within their discretion. So Councillor Ahern.
For.
Councillor Harcourt.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Carmel.
For.
Councillor Perez.
For.
Councillor Sadiq.
For.
Councillor Thorley.
For.
And I also vote for that recommendation, so that is that application approved. In which case then we move on to item number 8, which is the former cyclotron building. And if I can ask the presenting officer, Neil Edgerton, to please introduce the report. And Neil, I'll give you just a moment just to share your screen with us.
Once again, Chair, if I could say that given this is just a variation of condition, I would be happy with an abbreviated presentation.
I'm sure I'm sure Neil will take that on board. We do also have a speaker on this item, so we've just got that to bear in mind as well.
And viewers on YouTube.
Yes, right. Lots and lots of viewers on YouTube.
So I hope this is visible.
We can see your screen. Yes, thank you, Neil.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. So the application relates to the former cyclotron or the cyclotron site that's highlighted in red. Members may remember it came to the Planning Committee in 2019 as for the erection of a Part 2, Part 9-storey building to provide biomedical research centre, including specialist laboratory and research space. This is the building that was on the site previously, and now at the moment the development is well underway with the framework of the building largely complete. That was just a visualisation of the building that was approved. Condition 33 of the application related, or majority related to, related to the emissions limit on backup diesel generator located at roof level, which would only be significantly used if the power were to fail on site. If there was a power failure, then the generator would need to be used, and the condition had specific things relating to also CHP plant, which is there's no CHP plant there, so we're looking to delete that from the condition. Then with regards to the actual emergency diesel generator plant, the applicant's very concerned about the excessive and cost that would be required to meet the standards of the condition. Therefore, they propose to delete the references to NOx emissions for the emergency diesel generator plant. Now, officers have looked long and hard at this and negotiated with the applicants and considered that in this instance they were prepared to make a contribution of £111,000 to offset the impacts of air quality on the use of the generator in the future. In addition, we also achieved some further benefits of the condition with clarity on the visible emissions. That should be no persistent visible emission with an opacity greater than 20%. The generator should only be used for a maximum of 36 hours if there's a sustained interruption in the main supply. And then there's supposed to be an hour testing of the diesel generators once a month, and that will not be undertaken when the Ark Burlington Danes Academy School external amenity areas are in use. Now, officers on balance feel that we'll be talking about 12 hours a year as a minimum that the generator will be tested. In terms of power supply being interrupted, having looked at the figures we've seen over the last 5 years, it has been a matter of no more than, I think, 2 hours at most at one point, and most of the time it is generally only for minutes. Obviously, hospitals are a priority to be reconnected once there is a disruption in the supply. So therefore, on balance, officers consider with the benefit of changes to the condition and the contribution which would help to fund proposals in the Council's Air Quality Action Plan, that we feel we could recommend approval for this amendment. The plant in question, would be at the mezzanine level, 8th floor, is quite significantly high, over 40 metres above the ground. And so officers are comfortable that we feel that with the contribution towards the Air Quality Action Plan, that that would offset any potential impact of the diesel generators being used. So therefore we recommend that committee resolve the Chief Planning Officer be authorised to grant permission subject to the alteration or completion of a satisfactory legal agreement, as the current legal agreement will need to be altered to include the new contributions proposed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil. So I just want to check, Brian, it's my understanding that you briefly lost connection. Are you able to join us now?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Oh, good, wonderful. Okay, so you're back. Wonderful. Apologies, we thought we'd lost you. Brian, welcome to Planning Committee. Really sorry to have kept you so long this evening. Thank you for coming along and thank you for your time this evening. So Brian, you're speaking in support of this application. You've got 3 minutes in which to address committee. So I'll hand over to you whenever you're ready and let you know when you've got 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, committee. My name is Brian Little and I'm the Medical Research Council's project manager for the new LMS building at Hammersmith Hospital campus. Medical Research Council's London Institute of Medical Sciences, the LMS, is one of our 3 flagship MRC institutes in the UK and at the forefront of innovative biomedical research. Embedded in Imperial College London's Faculty of Medicine at the college's Hammersmith Hospital campus, the LMS provides world-class fundamental research in a clinical setting with translational opportunities exploited through this partnership with Imperial College. The new LMS building is a development of a new research facility for the LMS to replace outdated and out-of-life cycle accommodation. Construction is progressing well, as we saw, and we're now close to completing the concrete frame of the building. For a building's design point of view, and from the outset of the project, our team has taken very seriously the aspects of building emissions. The building is air quality neutral and carbon emissions will be reduced through the installation of solar panels, and the building will be heated, very importantly, through a connection to the local campus hospital-wide district heating system. The proposal before you relates to the emissions from a standby generator, which is required in British standards to provide secondary power for life safety in the case of power outage. The emergency diesel generator plant has been selected from a major manufacturer, Perkins, meeting all the current EU and British standard norms, and to be installed by a leading sector specialist, Shenton Group. From the generator's position on the 8th floor mezzanine and for the position of its exhaust, we have carried out fume dispersion modelling and wind tunnel testing, which show that pollutant levels would be significantly within acceptable air quality limit values. We have been very happy to accept reduced hours of running in the unlikely event of a major sustained power outage and have accepted the strict limitation on testing hours, those being 12 hours annually. Finally, a financial contribution is made to mitigate the residual emissions of the standby generator in line with the local plan policy CC10. We look forward to following Hammersmith and Fulham's air quality plans in the future and those projects that the financial contribution would help to support for the borough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian, and thank you for coming along to committee this evening. If I can move on to members' questions. Does any member have any questions about this application? Councillor Harcourt.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick points. Can you remind me what a cyclotron was? And then, more seriously, is there no? Is this an actual requirement of a medical facility that there's a backup diesel generator, or is there any more modern technology such as storage batteries or whatever that would negate the need for diesel? Because I'm thinking purely in terms of emissions and such like. I mean, if it's a requirement, then it's a requirement, and I've got no problem with that. And I certainly wouldn't want to do anything to stymie this particular development either. But obviously, I think we're all working towards trying to get a much cleaner atmosphere and such like. And given that it is a medical facility, it seems an obvious way ahead.
Neil.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. I mean, my understanding is, yes, there is a requirement to have the backup generator, and I think the diesel generator, unfortunately, is the most reliable and practical method to provide the power that's required for the site.
And what's a cyclotron?
Oh, yeah. That's...
It's okay if you don't know what a cyclotron is.
I had that answer prepared when I went to committee in 2019, but can't find my note.
We'll let you on.
Yeah, so I think from memory, it's to do with the type of area of medical research to do with particulates and what they do with them. But that's as far as my expertise goes.
That's less exciting than I was hoping for, Matt. So
apologies.
Thank you. Councillor, is that everything from you, Councillor Huffle?
If I
yes,
could,
indeed, yes.
Just add in from memory. From memory, I believe it's like a sort of centrifuge for atomic particles. So,
it's a compact particle accelerator.
Compact particle accelerator, Neil.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I believe it's used actually to attack cancerous growths and such like in human tissues.
Lovely. Okay, jolly good. Wonderful. I'm glad we got to the bottom of that. Does anyone else have any comments or questions on this application? I'm not seeing any hands, but I'm going to give you a moment. Nope. Okay. In which case then, we'll move on to the voting. So again, I'll be asking if each of the recommendations in the report are agreed, and then I'll be calling on each member in turn to give their vote. So please just respond with either for, against, or not voting. So if I can draw your attention to recommendation 1 in the report, which you'll find on page 70, noting the addendum. And that recommendation reads that the committee resolve that the Chief Planning Officer be authorised to grant permission upon the completion of a satisfactory legal agreement and subject to the conditions listed below. So, Councillor Ahern.
For.
Councillor Harcourt.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Carmel.
For.
Councillor Perez.
For.
Councillor Siddique.
For.
Councillor Thorley.
For.
And I also vote for the recommendation. So then if I can draw your attention to recommendation 2 in the report, which reads that the committee resolves that the Chief Planning Officer, after consultation with the head of law and the chair of the Planning and Development Control Committee, be authorised to make any minor changes to the proposed heads of terms of the legal agreement or conditions, which may include the variation, addition or deletion of conditions. Any such changes shall be within their discretion. So, Councillor Ahern.
For.
Councillor Harcourt.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Carmel.
For.
Councillor Perez.
For.
Councillor Siddique.
For.
Councillor Thorley.
For.
And I also vote for the recommendation. So that is that application approved, and that is our final item for the evening. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending or watching tonight's meeting, in particular those speakers that we had. The draft minutes of this meeting will be published on our website shortly. These will be formally approved at the next meeting on the 2nd of March. If you have any queries concerning the applications in the interim, please contact the case officer in the application report. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.